Today, we're going to go over the whole 360 on what's going on with the NAR settlement and how that will change how you buy a home or sell a home in Southern California here in the near future. We get to separate the facts from the fiction, as well as interview an agent from the state of Washington that went through all of these changes already 5 years ago and see how that affected their market, and then draw our own conclusions about what will happen that affects you here moving forward. So this whole NAR settlement started with the Sitzer-Burnett case in Missouri. So let's read about the case. The Sitzer-Burnett is a class action lawsuit that was filed in Missouri federal court by a group of home sellers in the state against NAR, National Association of Realtors, and other defendants, which were the main big brokerage: Anywhere, Berkshire Hathaway, Keller Williams, Remax. The plaintiffs claimed that real estate commission rates are too high, buyers' representatives are paid too much, and NAR's Code of Ethics and MLS Handbook, along with the corporate defendants' practices, lead to inflated commission rates. This court case was litigated in 2023, and at the very end of it, it went to the Missouri Supreme Court, and the jury ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. The plaintiffs won, and NAR and the big brokerages that were named as defendants were ruled guilty of artificially keeping real estate commissions too high. So what happened was NAR, the National Association of Realtors, who I will just refer to as NAR from here on out, they settled. They settled all these court cases and ended up agreeing to different changes within the real estate market nationally. So you may have seen that settlement. That was a big headline that came out earlier this year. Now, the problem was, before a lot of information got out about the specifics of the settlement and exactly what was going on, there were a ton of headlines that came out that didn't exactly speak to the truth of the situation. Let's take a look at a couple of those. Fox 26 Houston says, realtors agree to axe 6% commissions in NAR lawsuit settlement. The jury ruled that the companies owed a collective $1.78 billion in damages, but the realtors appealed and reached the settlement. Is the era of celebrity real estate agent over? Industry reacts to settlement that could slash commissions. An agreement between the National Association of Realtors and the plaintiffs charging artificial inflation of commissions paves the way for, and they have a 6% with an X over it. So it seems like a lot of people were really latching onto this. You won't have to pay 6% anymore thing. And then there's the funny one down here. Former broker unimpressed by the $418 million NAR settlement says they couldn't agree on lunch, let alone a conspiracy. The groundbreaking National Association of Realtors $418 million settlement might not be so life-changing. So it does seem like many headlines were talking about no more 6%, no more 6%. You will pay less, you will save money. And that's fine. And maybe that will happen. We'll get into the specifics of that later, and we'll see now that this settlement and the rules are coming to pass. But it did seem like a lot of folks latched onto that. This is CNN, a very respected news organization. The way Americans buy and sell homes is about to get turned on its head. 6% commissions split between the buyers and sellers brokers will no longer be the norm. Agent commissions are expected to fall, in some cases dramatically, because it will be competitive and negotiable, and sellers will be able to shop around for better rates. And other broker tactics that critics say are anti-competitive, such as a rule that made the sellers agents set compensation for buyers agents, will be prohibited. Goodbye 6% commissions. For decades, Americans have paid a standard commission of around 6% when selling a home, split between the seller's broker and the buyer's broker. The National Association of Realtors and its 1.5 million agents say those fees are negotiable, but certain NAR rules have kept commissions significantly higher than in other countries, where they can average around 1% or 2%. After the settlement, those commissions will be fully competitive, meaning brokers can advertise their rates to prospective sellers and people can shop around for bargains. Doesn't that sound great? People can shop around for bargains. People can also not pay 6% for the first time ever. Well, unfortunately, in some areas of the country, people already don't pay 6%, but also negotiating commissions has been a staple of the business for a really long time. Many of us realtors have lost business because different companies or different people come in and undercut on commissions. It's a normal process and a normal situation. So the idea that commissions will be negotiable for the first time is false. And yes, maybe commissions do come down overall. We don't know. We'll go through what happened in Washington later on and what we expect moving forward, but it won't be because the commissions are negotiable for the first time. That is not what's changing. And the fun idea that people can now for the first time shop around for bargains has been here for a long time. Take a look at a couple of these taglines from some bigger companies as well as different discount brokers. Company one says, "We will list your home for 1% if you buy and sell with us." That's a big company. Those are ads that are on television. You most likely have heard that before. That's company, a discount or a limited service company, stating that if you buy and sell with them, you can list your house for 1%, right? Find these better options. Company two has a low fat fee and they don't pay buyers agents commissions. That's their whole sales platform. This company has existed for a long time. Company number three, we will put your home on the MLS for a low flat fee. Flat fee brokerages haven't been around forever. They are also discount brokerages. And then there's agent versus agent, which I mentioned a second ago. This person said he would do it for X% less than you. And you have to decide whether or not to either lower your commission rate in negotiation or stand firm and work for what you believe you are worth. Many listing agents in Southern California have come up against one or all of those companies and negotiated against them multiple times in their career. That's normal and that has all happened. So that's not changing. They've always been around. There's always been people who will do things for less. The question is, what kind of service are you getting along with that? And then it's your choice as a consumer to change that. Obviously, NAR really disagreed with all the headlines that were coming out. So let's look at what NAR said immediately following the judgment. Realtor Magazine says the truth about the NAR settlement agreement. Misinformation has been pervasive in the media over real estate commissions. Here are the facts you should know. There's much the media has gotten wrong about NAR's settlement, which will require the association to pay $418 million over 4 years. Some outlets have suggested that NAR previously set or guided commissions to a standard rate of 6%. Even President Joe Biden in recent comments misspoke in suggesting that the settlement makes commissions negotiable for the first time. You know that is false. Obviously, this is speaking to realtors here. NAR does not set commissions, and commissions were negotiable long before the settlement. They are and will remain entirely negotiable between brokers and their clients, and housing prices are dictated by market forces beyond members' control. So obviously, we've got a bit of a he said, she said thing here. So let's see what actually is changing. There are two major changes that I can point to that are very specific. Number one is commission offered to a buyer's agent from the seller will no longer be shown on the MLS. Previously, when an agent would go into the MLS to schedule showings or to look at properties, they could see clearly right next to the listing how much that seller is offering in terms of buy-side commission. So they can look at 5 homes that they want to show their client and they can see that home A, B, C, and D are offering X, Y, Z, X commission. And the thought is that if the buyer's agent sees 5 homes and 4 of them are offering 3% and one of them is offering 1%, the buyer's agent is highly disincentivized to show that property for the 1%, and they may actually steer their client away from that property. So what this changes is it takes that information directly off of the MLS, and it also means that information will not be shared with sites such as Zillow, Redfin, Trulia, all of those sites as well. So it won't be as easy for a buyer's agent to see how much each listing is offering. However, a buyer's agent can still make a phone call, send an email, or do any other of these things that are not related to the MLS to find out if a seller is offering a buying side commission and how much. Number two is all buyer's agents are now required to have signed agreements before they show homes to prospective clients. Well, what does that mean? Don't buyer's agents always have agreements in writing with their clients? The answer to that is no. Some do, many don't. And this now will require buyer's agents to get something in writing with their buyer clients before they start to show houses. So that will become the norm. So now moving forward, before seeing houses, buyers will have something signed with their agents. So now let's get into all the details of what these mean and the different changes that are coming. We'll start with the seller side, but sellers, I implore you that if you are watching this video, you might find it valuable to continue and watch the buy side as well, because that definitely affects you. All of this works as one, and both sides affect both sides. So let's get into it. This is from the National Association of Realtors on a handout that agents are told to provide their seller clients. Here is what the settlement means for home sellers. Number one, you still have the choice of offering compensation to buyer brokers. You may consider doing this as a way of marketing your home or making your home more attractive to buyers. So there you go, right away. You are still allowed to offer compensation to buyer brokers. It just will no longer be shown on the MLS. That's a big distinction there. Many folks were confusing that sellers will no longer be able to offer compensation when that in fact is not true. Number two, your agent must conspicuously disclose to you and obtain your approval for any payment or offer of payment that a listing broker will make to another broker acting for buyers. Number three, this disclosure must be made to you in writing in advance of any payment or agreement to pay another broker acting for buyers and must specify the amount or rate of such payment. If you choose to approve an offer of compensation, there are changes to how this can happen. You as a seller can still make an offer of compensation, but your agent cannot include it on the multiple listing service. MLSs are local marketplaces used by both buyer brokers and listing brokers to share information about properties for sale. Your agent can advertise your listing via off MLS platforms such as social media, flyers, and websites. You as a seller can still offer buyer concessions on the MLS, for example, concessions for buyer closing costs. Recently, we've had things like 2-1 buy downs and other items like that that may be helpful to a prospective buyer and help get your home sold. So this says, yes, you still can offer compensation. Make sure it is in writing and fully disclosed exactly how much you are offering the other side, and that will not go on the MLS. Those are all the changes for the sellers. And the whole picture doesn't completely come into focus until we see all the changes for the buyers as well. Here is what the settlement means for home buyers, once again from the National Association of Realtors. You will sign a written agreement with your agent before touring a home. Before signing this agreement, you should ensure it reflects the terms you have negotiated with your agent and that you understand exactly what services and value you will be provided and for how much. The buyer agreement must include 4 components concerning compensation. A specific and conspicuous disclosure of the amount or rate of compensation the real estate agent will receive or how this amount will be determined. B, compensation that is objective. Examples are $0, X flat fee, X percent, X hourly rate, and not open-ended. Example is it cannot be buyer broker compensation shall be whatever the amount the seller is offering to the buyer. C, a term that prohibits the agent from receiving compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. And D, a conspicuous statement that broker fees and commissions are fully negotiable and not set by law. As you imagine, NAR has also put together a buyer broker agreement form that has been lawyered that has all these items in place. Next, written agreements apply to both in-person and live virtual home tours. So you can't get around it by viewing virtually. You do not need a written agreement if you're just speaking to an agent at an open house or asking them about their services. Last one, the seller may agree to offer compensation to your agent. This practice is permitted, but the offer cannot be shared on a multiple listing service. MLSs are local marketplaces used by both buyer brokers and listing brokers to share information about properties for sale. Those are all the details of those 2 main changing terms. We're taking the buyer side commission offered, if there is any, off of the MLS, and we're requiring agreements to be signed between buyers and their buyer agents, specifying how much and how they get paid before they go out and even start showing properties to their clients. The main change all this brings about is transparency. This forces a conversation with the sellers in the listing presentation side about how all of this works, a conversation not so dissimilar to this one we're having right now. And then same thing with the buyer side. It forces an explanation of what exactly a buyer's agent does for a buyer and what their fee is, what they work for, and how they will get paid, and what happens in this situation or that situation. Lots of transparency coming on both sides. And this actually already happened in the state of Washington starting in the year 2019. So I'm bringing in a good friend of mine, an agent up in Washington, Aaron Wilder, to talk about how that changed the way business was done up in the state of Washington in 2019. Therefore, what we can kind of expect moving forward here.
Hey, Garrison, thank you. So my name's Aaron Wilder. I'm with eXp Realty in Seattle. I work in Seattle proper. I'm a Seattle native. I also serve the surrounding areas, primarily work through repeat client referral, repeat business and referrals, and do some other lead gen activities too. But primarily I work through relationship. I've been doing real estate full time 100% since 2016. Before I was in real estate, I was a CPA, did taxes for about 9 years. And before that, I worked in the restaurant business for a long time. So I'm fairly experienced at real estate. I haven't been doing it, as long as some people, but I think the average person lasts about 18 months. So I've definitely surpassed that. Anyways, so Garrison brought me on to talk about some of the stuff that's going on with related to the NAR settlement and the new rules that are rolling out in NAR controlled MLSs. So I know Garrison's in California. I've seen a lot of the California forums, and I mean, those are kind of messy and there's a lot going on. There's a lot of misinformation. There's a lot of concern and fear of change. And so basically, I think Garrison brought me on because we do a call every week and we talk about these things. Washington basically rolled out these rules in 2019. So the rules that are coming out are basically the result of a DOJ investigation and some class action lawsuits. And I mean, I'll let Garrison tell you what the new rules are, but I'll explain what's going on in Washington and how that's affected Washington real estate. So in 2019, Washington rolled out two primary new rules. One is that and this one I think is funny, in Washington in 2019, they decided that publishing the amount of buyer broker compensation on the public websites would create more transparency for buyers, agents, and sellers. So they actually changed the rule from not having that published on public sites. So when we're talking about public sites, we're talking about Zillow, Realtor.com, Redfins, those type of sites. So prior to 2019, buyer agent comp was not published on those sites. Washington or Northwest MLS decided that it should be for transparency reasons. And so that was one of the rule changes. The other rule change that they rolled out is that they decoupled commissions, right? So they changed the contracts, the way they were structured. And instead of the listing agent offering a portion of their negotiated commission to a buyer's agent, they just broke it up into two pieces, okay? So those are the two main changes. At that period of time, so I was at Keller Williams then. I was at a large Keller Williams office. There was about 350 agents in that office, and they're one of the biggest offices on the east side. So Seattle area, like Bellevue, Kirkland area. They're a very large player over there. Pretty much everyone in the office was freaking out. They were worried that buyers agents weren't going to get paid anymore, that people knew how much they were going to get paid, and they would be asking for discounts or credits, these things. And so prior to this, one other rule change that I didn't mention. So prior to 2019, in order for a seller to list their house on the MLS, they had to pay at least $500 as a buyer's agent commission. They could not pay zero. Okay. So that was the other thing they changed. After 2019, they could actually offer zero. So everybody was worried about this. Buyer agency agreements weren't really a thing yet. I mean, some people use them, some people don't. I've always used them. So those were really the changes that they rolled out in 2019, which are very similar to the changes that are coming basically in a day or two now. Like I think tomorrow, right? It's today the 16th. Yeah, so tomorrow. So pretty much everyone was freaked out that they either weren't going to get paid, sellers weren't going to offer comp to buyers agents, and everybody was just really super worried. And pretty much nothing changed. Really, really nothing changed. Commissions haven't come down in any substantial amount. Sellers still understand that in order to sell their house and make it attractive to the vast majority of the buyer pool, that they're going to need to offer agent compensation. Occasionally you get somebody who's like, hey, I don't want to pay that much. And then you can easily walk them through the comps, and they want to be competitive with other people that are listing homes in their area, right? So it's been 5 years in Washington since they decoupled commissions. There's obviously no standard commission, but if you went through and averaged it out, it kind of depends on area. Seattle's typically still going to be paying, 2.5 to 3% buyer's agent's commission. Pierce County, which is south of Seattle, that's going to be more 2 to 2.5. That's how it's always been. And then Snohomish County, which is north of Seattle, that's usually 2.5 to 3%. So we really haven't seen it change much. You see a few people that are offering less, but I think those people were offering less before. I don't think there's been any noticeable change, right? Across the board, it's maybe come down slightly. So that was the big change in 2019. I think structurally, Washington and California are handling it differently. Like I think Garrison's seen some of the Washington forms, and they're very different than the California forms.
Yeah.
They're a lot cleaner, a lot simpler. Things are spelled out a little more clearly. So I think California forms are sort of messy. I'm not used to looking at those. A little different. But I think it's just an education thing for people. And the one thing that we've talked about on our other calls is that buyer's agent's commission is now just part of your marketing package. How do you want to market this home? Do you want to pay the commission? Do you want to not pay it? How much do you want to pay? Walk through the pros and cons of that. The second piece that people are really concerned about, that is of no concern to me, and Washington addressed this on January 1st, 2024. They passed a law. So this is a state law. This isn't even a MLS rule. They passed a law that any buyer that's working with an agent, they need to have a signed brokerage services agreement. It needs to say for how long the agreement is, and it needs to spell out how the agent gets paid. Basically, you have multiple options for an agent to get paid. They can request that the seller pay the buyer's agent's comp, just like it's always been previous to today, right? They could say, if the seller is not willing to pay that buyer's agent's comp, then the buyer will pay it, or a third party could pay it. Those are the main options, right? So that rolled out 120 or 1/1/24. I know at EXP specifically, people are super concerned about that. They don't have
you've had 6 months already, or I guess it's August now, so you've had 8 months already of dealing with this. Has that changed anything this year?
I don't think for me, it hasn't, because I've been using buyer agency agreements since 2016. I've never not used a buyer's agency agreement. Me personally, I wouldn't show anybody at home without a buyer's agency agreement.
And you said you'd been using them all along, even since before 2019. In 2019, when the new laws had passed, or the new way of doing business had started in 2019, would you say that more other agents started using them, or it kind of just was more of the same?
I think there was probably some agents that started using them, but generally more of the same. Most people that I've talked to in Washington at the different brokerages that I've been at, that I've been associated with, they do not use buyer agency agreements. They're very uncomfortable with them. They don't know how to explain them. They don't understand. They don't feel like anybody would want to sign them. But I've signed hundreds of them. I've had people sign. I've probably done 300 buyer's agency agreements, and I've had two people push back on them. One person just said they would never sign anything like that, and also they don't work with me. And another person had questions about it and wanted me to, I walk people through the comp structure on that. But I had one other person that was like, wow, I don't know if I want to do this. And then I said, hey, look, the most likely scenario is that the seller is going to pay my compensation. And he said, well, do you have numbers on that? I was like, yeah, here's a spreadsheet. And here's the last, 180 deals that I've done on the buy side. And one of those, the buyer had to pay.
So you said in this buyer agency agreement, one of the options is we want the seller to pay my buyer's agent. So do you have that conversation with your clients about what would happen if the seller is offering zero? What would be your standard operating procedure in that scenario?
Yeah, my conversation would be, so that's gonna be case by case basis. If it's a house that's not in multiple offers, and it's most likely, I think we're going to be able to negotiate with the seller somehow to work it into the deal to pay my fee, so that you don't have to come out of pocket on it, or at least don't have to come out of pocket on the full amount, right? If we were not able to negotiate that, you're going to have the option to move on to another house, or decide if you want to pay out of pocket at closing. I think that in a regular real estate situation when we're not in multiple offers, it's very easy to get that worked into the contract. I just don't see it not happening. Um, One other scenario is I've seen a couple people on new construction had registered with the builder before they engaged me as an agent. They decided that they wanted representation. Builder was not willing to pay it because of the site registration policies. And then buyer paid my commission. They felt it was worth it for them to pay me to represent them on the new construction, which I 100% recommend. New construction is really messy and they will kind of screw you over if you don't have an agent. I'm going through it right now.
Yeah, their entire the point of them existing is to make the most money off of those properties that they're building. Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah,
And they
yeah,
make you sign something when you walk in that says you cannot be represented, which is probably not great.
they can't even get the numbers right on the contract, honestly. Like I've had one right now working with a really big builder in the area that does a lot of high-end stuff. They cannot get the contract right with the additions. So you definitely need somebody that is savvy looking at that stuff. But that's sort of beside the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just walk them through all the different options and give them the different scenarios. And then I'll say, hey, like this is out of hundreds of deals that I've done, this has only come up a couple of times. Some people have had questions about, well, I heard there's changes, so then kind of like we've talked about in our calls, well, what do you know about the old system? Well, they don't know much. Well, here's how the old system worked. What do you know about the new system? Well, I don't know anything. Well, here's the new system. And they're like, okay, so really not much change, except maybe there's going to be some sellers that are trying to pay less commission. And I'm like, exactly. But most likely, I mean, I still believe most likely, based on what's happened since 2019 in Washington, is that most sellers are going to be wanting to pay commission because they're going to feel like that's the best way to get their house sold.
When you're on the listing side, do you field offers, two, three, four offers, and they're all kind of asking for the same level of commission?
So it hasn't really happened yet, right? Because we're able to offer commission.
That's
We
right.
don't
You're
we
only
don't have a
taking it off
limitation.
of the MLS now.
Yeah,
Everybody else.
they're unlike California where they're going to have the concession field, we still have the commission field. I've seen a couple listings recently, um, honestly, with a known discount broker that they're rolling with the new NAR rules, it looks like, and they're basically saying sellers are not going to pay commission. And you can negotiate with us about it if you want. I guess they feel like it's a way to maybe get a little more money for the seller because they're not going to pay that fee, or maybe somebody would be willing to take less. I'm not
Well,
sure.
it makes sense as a marketing tactic for them, right? They're telling their prospective clients that they could potentially sell their home for cheaper.
Yeah,
However, you still have to negotiate the sale of the home with a buyer, hopefully represented by a buyer's agent who does need to get paid by somebody. And it seems like the conversations that started in 2019 in your business with you before then, but with the 2019 was the same transparency that they're going for here right now, where you're having those conversations with their buyers about exactly what you do for them and exactly how you get paid. And then you're bringing that into potential negotiations with sellers when necessary. But it seems like you've said that it really hasn't been necessary because sellers are still finding as a marketing tactic, it is beneficial to them to offer commission on the buying side.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
absolutely agree with that. And I think that's going to continue. I mean, I just had a conversation. I just signed a new listing last week. I had a conversation with them about the old rules and the new. I wanted to make sure that they understood their options, right? Like, hey, you could offer zero, and they're like, why would we do that? Wouldn't that just stop people from coming and looking at our house? And like, some people would not look at your house because they
Well,
would see you're offering zero, and they don't want to pay it out of pocket, so they would
that's a
not look
big
at.
part of the settlement, right? The whole idea is, at least in California, is we're taking that off the MLS. Therefore, you can't look at one screen and see they're offering this, they're offering that, they're offering that, they're offering that. However, we can still make phone calls, we can still send emails before going and showing properties. And it behooves you as an agent who has an agreement with a buyer today or in the future to have that information ready before you show the homes to tell your client, hey, we're seeing these 5 properties today. Property A, B, and C are offering X, which means you pay less. And properties D and E are not. So, or offering more or whatever. So it's kind of the same thing, just a little bit more of a hoop to jump through. But what it does seem to do is does create that transparency and those conversations on both sides about commissions are negotiable, right? On both sides, both the seller and the buyer sides. And that was the whole point of this, because I think the whole DOJ thing was the argument was that commissions are not negotiable. So the transparency is a good thing. But it's interesting that it hasn't changed much since 2019 in your eyes. And it doesn't change much for me in terms of buyer's agreements, because I've been using those forever as well. But now it's required. And I do want to mention, though, that the NWMLS, so your main MLS up there in Seattle, is not joining the settlement. Can you explain the reasons for that real quick?
Yeah, they actually think that the rules of the settlement create less transparency and less clarity than the Northwest MLS rules. Northwest MLS is not NAR controlled, they're member owned. They had the opportunity to opt in to the settlement. They would have had to pay like $3 million to opt in. They elected not to. But they elected not to because they think that their rules are superior. And they don't think this is over yet. They think that this is going to be a continuing controversy. And they think that they're out in front of it. And I agree that they are out in front of it, because they've been very proactive, for the past 5 to 10 years to create more clarity, to create a better system, more clarity for sellers, more clarity for buyers. Northwest MLS is, I've talked to some other people around the country that are knowledgeable about this, and they think that they're one of the top MLSs in the country, that they're really for clarity, simplicity, agent laws and all the things, agent rules and regs, all the things that they're doing. I know some people locally that they don't like the Northwest MLS, but I think the Northwest MLS has done a great job. I think they do a good job protecting agents. I think they do a good job getting information to the consumers, and they're very forward thinking. And so I think that based on what California is doing, what I see is that's very much less clarity and less transparency in the contracts about who's getting paid, how much they're getting paid, what's happening. And the other thing I want to mention is that, as agents, we all know that commissions have always been negotiable. We've been negotiating commissions for years with people. One thing is that when I bring on a new buyer, I have a set fee that I'm willing to work for. That's my fee. They can try to negotiate with me. I probably will not budge on that unless it's multiple referral chains or something. There could be a reason why I would give somebody a discount. But in general, I'm not going to discount my fee. And I'm also not going to discount my fee if the seller is offering less than my fee. I'm going to go back to my buyer and I'm going to let them know and be like, hey, look, this is what our agreement says. This is how much I get paid. This is how much the seller is willing to pay. Here's how we can handle this. We can either try to build it into the deal, or you guys can say, we don't want to build it into the deal. We'll just pay you out of pocket at closing. So that's another thing that I think a lot of agents are very uncomfortable with. Even if they have a buyer's agency agreement, they're going to be reluctant to enforce it with their buyer. They're going to be willing to take what the seller's offering. I think that's a huge mistake. I think buyer's agents need to, your buyers are going to hold you to the terms of the contract. You need to hold them to the terms of the contract also. And I know that's probably not a popular thing to say, but this is what, like Garrison, how much work it is to do real estate. And there's a huge risk of not getting paid and doing a lot of work for various different reasons. So that's why the fees are what they are.
Yeah, I'm actually slightly excited about these changes from a more business perspective, because I've done buyer meetings and buyer consultations for years. I've signed buyer's agency agreements for years. It's something that I'm very comfortable with. So nothing really changes for me. And generally speaking, I think it's great for transparency, but it's also great for building trust to start the conversation with your potential clients about, this is what the transaction looks like. here's where you're protected, here's where your risk, this is how I get paid, this is everything I'm going to do for you, are you okay with that? And generally speaking, I feel like there's so much trust built during that meeting that I tend to retain over 90% of those clients. Like you said, I've had 100 of these meetings and I've only ever had one or two people push back on it. So the reason I'm not doing more business is because some folks decide to hire the first agent they see or the first agent they talk to who might not share all this knowledge right off the bat with them. If this creates a scenario where buyers are interviewing more agents to help them, I'm very confident that I provide valuable information enough to win a lot of that business. So if it gets me more meetings, I'm happy about that. I'm happy about transparency because at the end of the day, it's a negotiation. And it's the buyer's decision to potentially work for you, and it's a seller's decision to potentially work with you as well. Um, so transparency is good. I'm happy with it, and I'm excited for the potential of more folks taking 2 or 3 meetings with agents and seeing who they vibe with best, who's going to help them the best. Because I've been prepared for that for years, as so have you.
I think it's a huge opportunity for agents that come from a place of education and actually representing their clients and not positioning. We both know, and I'm not trying to knock anybody, but I'm not pointing fingers at anyone specifically, but we do know that there are agents out there that, they don't really do that much. They position themselves as, hey, I'll help you do this, and they don't really articulate the value. They don't really give a lot of advice. They don't help
Yeah.
them make compelling offers. I see it on my listings all the time. And I get an offer and I'm going back to them. I'm like, hey, like, that I told you we have 7 offers on this. Like, why did you even write this contract?
Well,
Like,
that's
this
an
is what my
interesting
client
thing
agreed
too,
to. I'm like,
in terms of agents that are good versus agents that are not good. Agents that are good will charge more, and agents that are not good will charge less. And in my experience, the better agents have the better clients that bring in the better offers that are both more money and have more better terms. So the agents that are charging less, excuse me, uh, we only have 10 minutes left. I just got the notification. I had to skip out of it. So the agents that are charging less generally are going to submit a bad offer. So they're going to charge less, but their offer is going to be $20, $30, $40,000 less with worse terms. Whereas an agent charging more is going to come in with a better offer, a better client, more prepared, and they're going to win the business anyway. So I see that, that in certain ways, this may make things more difficult, but in certain ways, it's kind of the market's going to find an equilibrium as well. It's going to make it especially more difficult on those agents that are not prepared, that have never talked to their clients in these ways before, that are uncomfortable with things like this. And by the way, you don't have to have a disclaimer as to whether or not there are good agents and bad agents. There are good versions and bad versions of anything. Call it doctor, call it,
absolutely. This
electrician,
is like
call
anything else.
it anything. You pick a profession. Everybody knows a good one, and one that's not so great. So
And
realtors
if
are
you don't
not,
know who the good, if you don't know who the bad ones are, you know what that means, right?
yeah, yeah, we're not immune to having not so great realtors, especially when the barrier to entry to get a license is low. But like every occupation has good ones and bad ones. So for the general public, both sellers and buyers, it would make sense for them to hire quality and to know what they're getting, which I think in this scenario, this creates a situation where they will know a lot more what they're getting, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing to have more clarity and more transparency. And I think the changes are an opportunity for, the good agents to secure more business and honestly like charge a higher fee. And the one thing that I would it's sort of similar to like when Redfin came along and they were offering, large discounts, right? Basically crediting back the whole buyer's comp is what they were doing in Seattle originally. They're like charging, you could go hire a Redfin buyer's agent and they would almost work for free, credit you back almost all of the commission to your closing costs. That ended up not being a sustainable model for anyone. They didn't do a good job. They weren't really able to get that many deals and contracts because they didn't have the agents that were experienced enough and had the knowledge to actually negotiate winning contracts. And they also, as a business, couldn't sustain that because they had to have employees that were a huge loss leader. Their whole thing was they were trying to get more listings. They were trying to dominate the market by being a discounter. They have gone away from that. They still do offer some discounts, but it's not anywhere near what it used to be.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting to see how these changes play out. So my take is everybody's always worried about change, and it's natural. People are afraid of change. That's human nature. But change gives opportunity, and usually the other side of change is opportunity, right? So you got people who are going to be able to thrive in this environment. Some people will be out of the business. So it just depends on how you approach it.
Very cool. Well, thank you for joining me. And regarding the changes for 2019, everything in Washington, it seems like you guys have already done a lot of this stuff. You're definitely not in the NAR settlement. You've chosen not to be, and not much has changed. So maybe moving forward in California, not much will change here either. But at the very least, we will be having those conversations. So very cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Garrison. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Thank you. So Washington Real Estate Service will not join national antitrust settlement. The reason they will not, or they're choosing not to, this is the NWMLS. They will not join the antitrust settlement for the protections held within it because they argue that they've already done all of this. So they're not a part of what this settlement is trying to correct. The local listing service made commission offers public on property listings and eliminated the requirement that sellers offer compensation to buyers' agents in 2019. Even so, those changes haven't done much to lower commissions in Seattle. According to a 2022 analysis by Consumer Federation of America that found most Seattle listings offered buyers agents commissions of 2.5% to 3%. Starting earlier this year, Washington law requires real estate agents to enter written agreements, including details about agent pay with their clients, similar to the requirements in the NAR settlement. Sellers negotiate how much to compensate the listing firm and decide whether to offer to contribute toward the buyer's broker compensation and the amount of any such offer. Buyers agree how much to pay their own brokers at the outset of their relationship and can then negotiate for the seller to help cover that cost as part of the purchase. NMLS reforms have had no discernible effect on consumers. Commission rates remain relatively high and uniform. Now, after talking about all of that, what do I expect will happen? Well, in my experience here in Southern California as a listing agent, I can say that for the most part, the best offers usually come in from the best agents. And by best offer, I would describe that as best price, best terms, best agent, best communication. All those things that you would want to accept as a seller come in the same offer. And those offers tend to be for the highest value. If I have a 10 offer sample size, usually 3 of those offers will come in low with bad terms from poor agents. 4 of those offers will be in the middle, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And then 3 of the offers will be from great agents with great prices and great terms. So if you're a seller evaluating all these offers, whether you're evaluating 10 offers or 1 offer, all of that money is coming out of the most important number, which is the seller net. Now, a seller can sell a home for $1 million with a $25,000 fee, so they net $975,000, or they can sell a home for $975,000 with no fee, and it's the same money either way. So many of these offers will come in asking the seller to pay for them, and I would imagine that many of the best offers with the highest value will include a buyer's agent commission. I believe in many of these situations, the better offers will be high enough above the rest to cover whatever the agent is asking for commission. I also believe that sellers, just like in Washington, will probably mostly still want to offer a buyer side commission as a marketing tactic to get more people into the home. Because if a buyer's agent is a good agent and has a fee of, say, 3% for argument's sake, the buyer knows that they might be on the hook for that 3%. The buyer then is submitting offers knowing that. So they're submitting offers either 3% less, or they're asking for the seller to contribute to that. However, if a seller is not contributing anything towards a buyer's agent commission, a buyer who doesn't necessarily have a lot of cash might not see the property, because it is smart for a buyer's agent now to disclose how much each property is potentially offering before they even take them out to see the property. If a buyer hires a great agent and is paying 3% and sees that a seller is not cooperating, how good are those photos? How great is that marketing? Do they think that they're really going to want this place, or do they skip that showing? Right? So all of this will work together and we will find an equilibrium. And Washington found it, and they've found since 2019 that commissions haven't really decreased by very much. That's both in that article we saw as well as in Aaron Wilder's experience. So I believe a similar thing will happen here, but nobody knows. We can't tell the future. Let me know in the comments below what you think will happen. I would love to get that conversation started. I'm Garrison Comstock. I own Garrison Team Real Estate here in the South Bay of Los Angeles, and I would love to be your real estate guide moving forward. So please reach out, Garrison at soldbygarrison.com, if and when you have any questions about real estate or specific property here locally. I'm happy to help, and I will speak to you next time.